Hi everyone and welcome to the 8th online session. In today's session we are going to take up a very important translation strategy known as transposition. What we are going to discuss today is to identify the problems of translating complex items and to categorize these problems. We'll also be able to use transposition to avoid linguistic problems and attain linguistic appropriateness and naturalness in the target language, of course. So, if we have a text like this, here, in this text, the educational system in Egypt was in dire need of radical change. A swift renewal is required for all traditional curricula that depended mainly on memorizing to get high marks and join prestigious faculties, as they bring up empty-minded generations. Since students are preoccupied with browsing and social media, curricula should be modernized and modified to address students' need and grasp their attention. Here, in this text, we have a lot of challenging points. For example, we have some lexical items here that we need how to transfer them naturally into Arabic, empty-minded. How can we translate it? Can you guess? And then we have this word, browsing. What does it mean? Do we have one equivalent word in Arabic that can get us the meaning, the intended meaning of browsing? How about this word, to address students' need and grasp their attention? And of course, together with what I've just said, we have here in dire need of radical change, and we have here, see, this is a compound complex sentence. Why is it a compound complex sentence? Because here we have an independent, this is the first independent clause, and this is the second independent clause, and here we have a dependent clause. So this is a compound complex structure. So how can we break it down into translatable units? And then we have here, since students are occupied with browsing and social media, we have a complex structure. Because again, we have here a dependent clause, and here we have an independent one. So, how can we get a natural translation for this text? How can we overcome the translational problems, whether the lexical problems, or the structural problems, or the meaning problem? Just like in here, address, bring up empty-minded, in dire need of, occupied with. In fact, in our previous two sessions, we discussed thoroughly the idea of collocation and the word patterns, and what are the main sources that we can depend upon to get natural equivalent for each collocational groups. And we said we can go back to dictionaries, or we can get some specialized dictionaries dedicated for collocations. But you should keep in mind that it's okay if you still have some problems with translation. Why is that? Because, as a matter of fact, translation is always disappointing and frustrating. So what you need to do is to keep practicing these strategies. And maybe your first time, it wouldn't be something that you like to have, but maybe the next one or the third time or the fourth attempt will be much more satisfactory. So, how can we get a more interesting, acceptable, and satisfactory translation for this text with so many problems? So, one of the best ways to promote your translational competence to be a good translator is to use techniques, and of course is to use strategies proposed by professional translators. and here is one of them. We have here some strategies that have been promoted by and proposed by Vinay and Darpillay, two French scholars who wrote a book on the stylistic features between English and French. Of course, here our main focus in this course is to translate English into Arabic and vice versa, while we can use their techniques. So they said we have two ways to translate. Either you'll go for the direct translation approach or the indirect translation approach. What is the difference between them? In the direct translation approach, which is the first thing that must come to your mind while you are translating, don't attempt to go to the indirect unless the direct didn't help you. So here, in this part, this is step 1. If you start translating, go for these direct techniques. And if they don't provide a satisfactory equivalence, go for indirect one. So what is the difference between them? So according to Vinay and Darpillay, we have direct approach, and under this approach we have 3 strategies. The first one is known as borrowing, the second one is known as calque, C-A-L-Q-E, and the last one is direct translation of meaning, or what they named literal translation. So what is the difference between borrowing, calque, and direct meaning? We are going to find out just in a minute. And if these direct translation again doesn't help you with satisfactory equivalence, go for this, the indirect one. And under the indirect one, we have 4 translational strategies. The first one is transposition, the second one is modulation, the third one is adaptation, the fourth one is equivalence. E-Q-U-I-V-A-L-E-N-C-E, equivalence. So here again, we need to find out how to use these techniques to improve our translational competence. For example, the direct techniques, which should be your first result, which should be your first attempt while translating any text, includes 3 main strategies. 1, borrowing, 2, calque, 3, direct literal translation. Borrowing is to take words over from a language into another. For example, if we try to translate this word from English into Arabic, computer, how can we translate it? We can say computer, right? How about this word, projector or PowerPoint? Or what's like laptop? What's like coronavirus? So here we need to borrow these words, and in this case we're going to use transliteration or phonetic translation. And the second technique that we can use to handle translational problems, we can use calque. What is calque? Calque is a combination of borrowing, this one, and literal translation. What do you mean by that? If we have an expression like, for example, social distancing, which is common nowadays given the coronavirus problem. Social distancing, to keep some distance between any social actors or with anyone with whom you are interacting. So social distancing here, this is This is not a word, this is not a lexical item, it's a phrasal item, it's a phrase, right? So here, calc always work on the phrase level, not the lexical level. So here we can translate it into التباعد, right? الاجتماعي. So التباعد الاجتماعي, it's just like borrowing. We don't have this expression in Arabic, so we borrowed it into Arabic and we translate it literally from English, of course. Or we have words like honeymoon, honey, العسل, and moon, which is a little bit an equivalent for month. So شهر العسل, we don't have this in Arabic. Or we could have other example like skyscraper, ناطحة سحاب. How about direct literal translation? Direct literal translation is just using the dictionary to find the equivalent word for any given word in any text. So these are the direct techniques. So if these direct techniques do not provide you with a satisfactory, acceptably good translation, your second attempt to go for the indirect translation techniques. The indirect translation techniques, as I said earlier in this session, consist of four main techniques. The first one is transposition, the second one is equivalence, the third one is adaptation, the fourth one is, of course, so we have adaptation, equivalence, modulation, and transposition. What is transposition? Transposition is changing any part of speech into another part of speech that is more appropriate in the target context. What do you mean by that? In transposition, you can change any given part of speech. What are the parts of speech? In English, for example, we have eight main parts of speech. We have nouns, verbs, adjective, adverbs. These are known as the lexical parts of speech, and we have pronouns, preposition, conjunctions, and articles, the functional parts of speech. So this kind of transposition consists of two main types. So these two main types are obligatory transposition. Obligatory, it means that we do not have any other option, we must do this. Or optional transposition. Optional, it means it's totally up to you to go direct or indirect, to use borrowing, calc, and literal direct translation of meaning, or to go for transposition, and in this case it's optional. So let's go first to take up the optional transposition. Optional transposition, for example, we have this headline. This headline is taken from الأهرام newspaper, the online website. So we have here, situation is still critical in Syria. How can we translate it? Just have a second to guess the correct translation or the accurate and natural translation. What do you think? So this headline could be translated as, what do you think of that translation? الموقف ما زال صعبا في سوريا. Or we could say لا يزال الموقف خطيرا في سوريا. Or we could say الموقف متأزم في سوريا. So here we have optional transposition. What do you mean by optional transposition? Let's analyze this text, the first translation, for example. Situation, الموقف. still مازال. It's an adverb. Critical صعبا خطيرا حرجا. In Syria. So this is the direct approach, right? Or we could go for this. لا يزال. لا يزال, here we changed this, which is an adverb, into a verb, right? لا يزال الموقف خطيرا في سوريا. And this is an acceptable and natural translation, right? And how about this one? الموقف متأزم في سوريا حتى الآن. So if we just have a closer look at the translation of this adverb, so in one attempt I translated it into an adverb of time. In another I changed it into a verb, a negated verb, of course, verb in the negative case, or I used prepositional phrase. So we have until, now, so far. So we have here 3 different ways, and of course all of them are acceptable, and maybe we have 4th attempt someone thought of while I asked you to guess. So we have here موقف ما زال صعبا لا يزال موقف خطيرا أو موقف متأزم في سوريا. So we have here 3 different ways. So that's why it's optional. It's totally up to you. If you go for the direct approach, so it is acceptable, and you can change this part of speech into another part of speech. So we changed this adverb into a verb, or we changed this adverb into 2 parts of speech here, a preposition plus an adverb of time. How about the obligatory transposition? Obligatory transposition, in some cases, transposition provides or presents itself as the best option at hand to avoid any linguistic oddness. How about translating this sentence? More specifically, this word. Any anti-dumping measures enforced by the state should be approved by the parliament. So how can we translate it? One way to translate this is to change this one word in English into a prepositional phrase in Arabic. So we have preposition plus its complement. Or we could say that يجب موافقة البرلمان على أي إجراء تتبناه الحكومة against anti. So we changed this, which is one word in English, because this is a prefix, right? Just like antibiotics, or anti-war, or antichrist, prefix, and then we have the root, right? Morphological analysis again. This is the main part of the word, dumping, and this is a prefix, something that is added before, just like this, or or l, dislike, like and dislike, agree, disagree, understand, misunderstand, and so on and so forth. Or we can use it just like this, against, and then we change this adjective into a noun or a prepositional phrase. So we don't have one word, so this is an obligatory transposition. So in some cases we don't have any other option at hand. So one way to handle this problem is to think of it changing this part of speech into another part of speech. That is to say, we can change a noun into some other part of speech. It could be an adjective, it could be an adverb, it could be a verb, or we could change an adjective into a noun, or into a noun phrase, or into a prepositional phrase. How about this one? How can we translate this? Empty-minded generation. So generation, we know for sure that it means الأجيال, right? How about empty-minded? It's one word in English, compound word. consists of an adjective and another adjective, so two adjectives. And here it is in the adjectival position. So how can we translate it? Can you guess? Sure, we could say أجيال بلا وعي. How did we get this translation? Here it's an adjective, right? But here we have preposition and negation, negative, and then we have noun, right? So we don't have an adjective, but we have three different parts of speech. So أجيالا بلا وعي, so a preposition which is ب, and negation item which is لا, and this one it's a noun, and this noun is a little bit in the genitive case. So what are the forms of transposition? Transposition can take many forms. So what we are going to do today is to discuss 8 main forms of transposition. For example, one form of transposition is that we can change an adverb into a verb. How about this sentence? Situation is still critical, and we have changed this adverb into a verb, right? لا يزال. Or how can you translate this? How can we change this into a verb? What do you think? Guess, and if you don't know the answer, I will just let me know on the LMS, and I will provide my attempt. And another form of transposition is to change a verb into a noun. How about this sentence? As soon as he gets up, for example, it's a dependent clause. So how can we translate it? So as soon as he gets up, we can translate it into this, استيقاظه. So this is a phrasal verb, while here it becomes a noun, plus a pronoun, of course. So we change this verb into a noun. Or we can change a noun into a past participle, into an adjectival, an adjective form. For example, if we'd like to translate this part, بذل الجهد يؤثر على نجاحنا. That's why we have a book written by a famous best-selling author entitled Study Smart, Not Hard, for example. So our success depends on the exerted effort. So here, exerted, it's an adjective, right? So it is a past participle adjective, an adjective with ed, past participle, just like the verb. But here it is in the adjective possession. So here we changed this noun into an adjective, and it sounds much more acceptable in English than this, exerting effort. And a fourth type of transposition is to change an adverb into a noun. How about this one? Not likely. Do you want to come running with us? Not likely. How can we translate it? We could say من المحتمل, not. ليس من المحتمل, not. And likely is changed into a noun here, or a prepositional noun, prepositional phrase, or وارد. So we changed this adverb into a noun. Or we could change the past participle, the ed adjective, into a noun. How about this one? He sheltered his cigarette in his cupped hand. How can we translate his cupped hand? Just like a cup, you know, the cup, of course, cup of tea, cup of coffee, just like the cup, just like this. It's the cup. So a good translation is this: قبضة, قبضة يده. Maybe he saw his father coming in his direction or whatsoever, so he أخفى سيجارته في قبضة يديه. So here we changed this past participle ed adjective into a noun. a sixth type of transposition is to change a noun into an adjective, like this one. ألهمت ثورة مصر, it's a noun. الكثير من بلدان العالم. We could say the Egyptian, for example. It's an adjective into a noun, or noun into an adjective, so we could say the Egyptian revolution inspired ألهمت many countries all over the world. So here we changed this noun into an adjective, and instead of saying Egypt, we said Egyptian. And of course we could say Egypt's revolution, but here again it's just an example for this. Or we could use this. يحب الكثير من شباب العرب أسلوب الحياة اللندنية. So we could say many Arab youths like the modern London lifestyle. So we have here, it's an adjective, and we changed it into a noun. Or we could change an adjective into a verb, like this one. It's common to think that sports are wastes of time. So we could say يسود الاعتقاد. So we changed this adjective into a verb. بأن ممارسة الرياضة مضيعة للوقت. Or we could change a prepositional expression, a prepositional phrase, into an adjective or into an adverb. He is going out in the night. He's going out in the night or in the evening. So we could say سيخرج ليلا. Here it's an adverb, ظرف زمان in Arabic, and here in English it was a prepositional expression. A preposition plus its complement is known as a prepositional expression in English. So again, we have discussed so far 8 main types of transposition. So what is transposition? As a quick review, is to change any part of speech into another part of speech that is more appropriate, more acceptable, more satisfactory in the given context. And this will render your translation into a natural, accurate, and communicatively satisfactory one. So of course we have some optional, as I gave some examples earlier before taking up the obligatory ones. For example, we have here تدعم الجامعة طلاب المتميزين. We have here the university gives a great support to distinguished students. So here we changed this verb into a noun. Or وعد بأن ينجز عمله قبل عودته. We have here it's a noun. We changed it into again a phrasal verb. So remember the text that we started our session with. It was this text that includes so many problems here. Among these problems was some structural problems, some lexical problems, and some, of course, meaning problems. So my attempt to translate this text could be this one here. أصبحت العملية التعليمية في مصر بحاجة ماسة لي in dire need of لتغييرات جذرية social or critical or radical change وتجديد شامل لكافة المناهج التعليمية التقليدية all educational curricula التي تقوم في جوهرها على الحفظ للحصول على درجات مرتفعة والالتحاق بكليات القمة. Here I tried to translate the first compound complex sentence into a connected structure in Arabic, and here I tried to link the text again لأن مثل هذه المناهج bring up I translated it into تخرج أجيالا empty minded بلا وعي، إذ أصبح الطلاب أكثر اهتماما. Here, and we have browsing. When I said we have a problem with browsing, here we have I translated browsing into تصفح مواقع الإنترنت. So instead of one present participle in English, which is the verb plus the ing, browsing, I translated it into 3 items in English, and this is transposition, which makes my translation natural and acceptable. And instead of saying social media, I translated it التواصل. So I added this word تواصل, شبكات التواصل. Just media, I translated it into شبكات التواصل. I didn't say, or I haven't chosen to say وسائل الاجتماع or وسائل الاجتماعية. While it is much more natural if we choose this, which is شبكات التواصل الاجتماعي. فينبغي أن تكون المناهج متطورة. I added here ينبغي. I tried to link these sentences also, but بما يلائم احتياجات الطلاب ويثير فضولهم. So again, you should keep in mind here using transposition in this translation to overcome so many problems. Two, that I use cohesion and coherence that we discussed earlier in our previous sessions, and we said what is cohesion and what is coherence. And also I have made use of collocation. Remember collocations, of course. That's why I said here يثير فضولهم or يثير اهتمامهم, and يلائم, which is address the student's need. I didn't say يوجه أو يعنون احتياجات الطلاب, but in Arabic we say يلائم أو يشبع احتياجات الطلاب. So this is a practice on transposition and how can this translational strategies be used to make your translation natural and acceptable. Practice 2, what we are going to do in this practice, the second practice, which will be your assignment, is to, here we have a text, and this text is also about education. What I need you to do is to try to translate this using transposition whenever is acceptable and whenever it seems natural to use it. Let's read it together. Education is worth doing. I guess here we need transposition. Education can hold a key role in finding a job, and your level of education can affect both the breadth and depth of jobs available to you. You typically can apply for a broader range of jobs with more education. One of the basic advantages of education is that it protects against unemployment. In essence, the higher your level of education, the more likely you are to find work. This is proven in the 2012 U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Education Report. The employment rate of high school dropouts in 2012 was 12.4%. This was approximately 49% higher than the rate among the people with a diploma, and nearly 64% higher than the rate for bachelor degree holders. So how can we translate these words? For example, breadth and depth. And typically, do we need transposition? What do you think? And a broader range of jobs, and protect against هل يحمي ضد, and in essence, and likely, of course, and here this compound structure, and dropout. Do we have one word for dropout? I don't think so. And people with diploma. Can we use transposition to overcome this problem? And here, bachelor's degree holder. So what I need you to do is to, number one, to provide a lexical translation for these highlighted items. And two, is to translate the text and highlight the places wherein you decide to use transposition. And that's it for today. Thank you so much, and please make sure to submit your assignments on time because they will be graded. And also what I need you to keep in mind is that this week we have our second graded quiz. Maybe it will be in tomorrow's session or in Wednesday's session, and I will let you know by sending you a message on the LMS. Thank you so much and wish you the best of luck.